So this is just a quick understanding of how modes fit into the context of a song. So to illustrate that, I'm just going to quickly kind of go over the 12-bar blues. So you have kind of three major roots that you're playing. You got the one chord, which is the A. And you got your 4, which is, in this case, the D. And you got your 5, the E. And then you go back to 1. Just that 1, 4, 5, 1. And you'll notice that when you play each of these, it's 1, 4, the major 4, and the major 5. That's what it means when they say 1, 4, or 5 is in the context of a full scale. You're playing each Roman numeral, the 1, the 4, or the 5, represents the degree or which note you're playing in the scale. So if I'm playing the A scale, if I go up to the 4, A, B, C sharp, D, and the only reason why I know this is C sharp is because I studied music theory in college, and it's a bunch of nerd shit that I don't expect anybody to ever care about. And you don't really need to know that to understand why these shapes work. So anyway, if you're playing the one chord, the scale that's going to be diatonic, or what's going to feel good in that scale, is just going to be the major scale, because that's what the one chord is. That's the root. So all those notes are going to sound good when you play it over an A chord. And so like even though, or like this one, or this one, A major. So something that I like to do is, normally when you go through a 12-bar blues, you're just going, like 4 bars. You go up to the 4, to the D, down to the A, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, up to the D, to the 4, back down to the 1. This is super bare bones as it gets. To the 5, to the 4, and the 1. And then usually there's a turnaround at the end. So, now when I'm playing these, I'm playing, little 7-chord triads. But those are kind of have a jazzy, unresolved sound that constantly keep the tension on, because you're playing that dominant 7, the major 3rd and the minor 7th. But that's kind of irrelevant here. You can kind of emulate what these chords are trying to do by I'm trying to figure out how to word this. So like each chord does a different thing. So the first chord, it's tonic. It feels like home. It doesn't really go anywhere. And then so the next mode that you play over D, you're not playing tonic anymore. That sounds weird. It doesn't sound quite right, and that's because you're playing notes that are no longer working with A. If you play the major scale, you're playing notes that work in D, but you're not playing in D, you're playing in A. So now this note sounds out of place because this note isn't in this scale. It sounds weird. So what do? You still start on D, but you need to play the notes that belong to A. And the way that people describe that is with modes. For lack of a better term, the mode for the 4 chord is Lydian. And the only thing that changes is, instead of going, is you're just playing a sharped 4th. Or it looks like 5, 7, 4, 6, 7, 4, 6, 7. And so it sounds weird at first when you listen to it. It doesn't sound quite right because of... It sounds weird. But you have to remember what role this chord is filling, and it's called subdominant, which is a big fancy word that means it's leading me somewhere. To summarize as briefly as possible, it just means that you have a root chord, a subdominant chord, and then a dominant chord, and then you go back to home. And the point of each chord is that subdominant wants to go to dominant, and dominant wants to go home. This is like the central tenet of Western music. So it's almost everywhere that you see. So you can represent the feeling of these chords with modes. So kind of to briefly go over what each mode needs to be, you need to pick the mode that represents the feeling of that chord. So like the reason that people play Lydian over the D isn't because they like Lydian, it's because Lydian evokes a subdominant feel in the key of A, so that when you go to the dominant, it feels like it's supposed to go there. And so I'm going to play those three scales in a row kind of to illustrate how it goes there. So you have the major scale in A with root, and then you play the 4 chord over the D. And then when you get to the E, the 5. That's your dominant chord, and so that's when you play Mixolydian. And the only thing Mixolydian is the mode where all of these notes, all those notes are arranged to fit into the E scale. Because you'll see if I just keep going, it's the same scale. You're just playing the notes in a different order. And so by playing the same notes in a different order, you have a different feeling. And so if you wanted to replicate how this sounds without knowing any theory, you could just follow the following instructions. So on A, you play the major scale. On the D, right above it, you play the Lydian scale, which has a sharped 4th. And then finally on your 5, the E, you play a Mixolydian scale, which has the flattened 7th. And then you go back to A. So let me kind of play it for you full speed in the context of a 12-bar blues by playing one run of the scale as a beat. And just by listening to it, you get the feeling of the music going somewhere. And each time I change my root, the scale changes, and that scale pulls you towards the next scale. And this concept of music leading somewhere and going to some place is called tonality. It's kind of a big concept that's hard to describe, but basically like your music has direction, it goes somewhere. You create tension, you put a note somewhere that sounds weird, and then you go somewhere that makes that note, like you release the tension that you create with that note. And that tension release feels great. And that's why music that does it sounds good. It sounds right. Anyway, let me kind of finish with the 12-bar blues programming. So it's just 1 1 1 1 4 4 4 4 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 4 4 4 4 4 4 4 4 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 5 5 5 5 4 4 4 4 1 1 1 1 5 5 5 5. This is the basic shape of the blues. At least a 12-bar blues, I guess. It's what the skeleton framework I would consider for it to be. And so each time you change to the different number, you play the scale that matches that number. 1 is the Ionian major scale, the 4 is Lydian, and 5 is Mixolydian, with the changes that I talked about. The Lydian is the same as the major scale, but you sharp the 4th. And the Mixolydian is the same as the major scale, but you flatten your 7th. And so kind of the point that people talk about is that like it would be nice if you would be able to just like think about where like all these notes are in real time, but like realistically what's going to happen is you just need to memorize how a Mixolydian scale feels, and then you just need to understand where it fits. A Mixolydian scale provides tension that wants to resolve to Ionian scales. That is the purpose. That is the basic, like, first level explanation. Your Lydian scale wants to go to a Mixolydian chord change. Your Mixolydian chord change wants to resolve to Ionian or tonic or home. That is the essentials. So let me kind of play through this, and I readily encourage you to kind of try out the same thing, just so you can follow. You just play 3 scales in 3 positions, and the thing is that even though your scales are changing, because everything is still, those are the only notes that are being used. That's why it works. There's no weird notes being played. You're just playing them in different orders to evoke a different feeling. So, like I said, I just kind of try it for yourself. Practice just going like through these scales, and see if you can train your ear to get a feel for what feeling each scale evokes. Because that's going to be how you're going to grow as a musician, is learning how chords and how scales and how notes sound and what their role is in your music. And then once you know what the role of it is, then you just apply it where you want to. Then it becomes more about feeling. If you say, okay, well, I want to create some tension here, if I want to create something jarring, that you can put that in there, because you have these tools that are, their listed purpose is to create tension. But if you create that tension, you need to resolve it somehow. And this is the beginning of a needlessly deep rabbit hole that all of us struggle to go down day by day. Anyway, 12-bar blues. I've rambled long enough. And then I'm gonna play it with a swing rhythm, just cause. So. Whatever. It's all a bunch of jazz bullshit anyway. Cheers.